Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome everybody to Womanomics online session. It's a fabulous Friday morning and we're having these fabulous sessions. Online today is Natasia McMahon and we're so excited to have her. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, these sessions that we've curated with our partners are essentially designed to do two things. One, to provide a certain level of personal mastery support for the entrepreneur, because a business is not a business without the individual who's running it. And the second aspect is to essentially engage with entrepreneurs and ecosystem partners to help us navigate this period of COVID and beyond. And this particular conversation is of much interest to me. I always say that in one of my past lives, one of the jobs that I had every day waking up was business continuity. I used to wake up to figure out how to break the bank. And so literally the world's been broken, right, Natasha? And because it's been broken, we need a brand new conversation. We need to all equip ourselves. We need to understand how to navigate the strategic impacts and to also have to have an understanding of the operational dimensions and implications on our business that not only COVID brings, but rather looking at business continuity. The last time any organization had to really think about this was 9/11, September 11, and in the US, because of those strikes in that space. And now what we're finding is that everybody has to start thinking about business continuity and what does it mean to live in a COVID affected environment, but also importantly, post this, what should you also be thinking about? So we're very excited to have on board the director for Africa, let me say infrastructure, and lead for Africa at Turner and Townsend, Natasia, who will be essentially curating this conversation for us. For those who've joined us, the format of the session is that Natasha will have an opportunity to speak, and then all of you have currently been put on mute. Please adhere to that because it really helps in terms of getting the content through. We will ask that you either put up your hand on the right-hand side of your screen. If you put up chat, you'll be able to see yourself, and you can actually either put up your hand and to ask a question, but it's also helpful in the Q&A section if you can start asking questions. So when it's open for the open discussion, we can just cue you in. Natasha, in terms of receiving the questions, we typically take 2 or 3. So we'll just ask you just to take those down and then to answer those. So welcome to everybody. And Natasha, please take it on board. What are we about to hear? I'm going to be muted and offline, and it's all over to you.
Thank you very much, Rahima. I'm excited to be collaborating with Womanomics on this fantastic conversation that we need to have. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about Turner and Townsend and what it is that we do. Turner and Townsend is an independent professional services company. We provide services in the program management, project management, cost management, and consulting environments. And we do this in 4 major sectors. We do it in real estate, in infrastructure, in mining and minerals, and we do that in oil and gas as well. So we know that COVID-19 has presented us with some immediate and exceptional challenges. And one of the things we all needed to do as organizations and as individuals was to look at what is this real impact on the way that we live and work. And as we started to do some introspection as an organization, our global team started to look at what does this mean for our clients. And my colleague Ian Ballantyne and his team developed this business continuity framework. And basically what it does is this. It is a review of your business, your capital portfolio, your capital programs, your project. So whether you are a small business, a emerging enterprise, a corporate, a state-owned entity, or whether you just own a portfolio of projects, there's something in here for everybody. And how it works is this. It's a review of your capital program or your business. It is lean and it is rapid. It is comprehensive. It is globally focused, which means we give you access into our global suite of of information that we have, clients we've worked with, how it's impacted on them, businesses that are similar to yours, and it is very solutions driven. And what we do is we look at your business through four main lenses. We look at your business through a strategy lens, through what how it impacts on your people, your operations, and your supply chain. And essentially what we do is the model has been developed to have like 140 questions or more. And when we run a small workshop with you initially to do an assessment of where you are, we actually have around 20 questions looking at those four lenses. But essentially what we will do is we will look to you to give us your main areas of concern, your pain points, whether it be in strategy, whether it be with your people, how it has affected your business. And we start to do a deep dive. Now, when you think about your strategy, it's essentially your performance. And what we do is we now need to look at how has this COVID-19 and the impacts on globally, how has that impacted on your business? How's it impacted on your performance? Your understanding of your governance, what that's going to mean. What does the changing economic environment mean to you? For example, if you are a state-owned entity and you have a capital portfolio, it's very simple and easy for us to be able to understand that we now need to align our cash flows, our capital portfolios to the reduced cash flows. But now we need to actually have a deeper look to see what does this mean in terms of governance? How do we need to change the access we've given people to be able to have a delegated authority to sign off projects? Things need to change. When it comes to your people, we need to have a look at what does this mean for the safety of your people? What does this mean for the efficiency? Your culture, how is your culture changing, and the way that you communicate with your people? Because we will have changed significantly in the way that we work. Like we are doing now, you and I are communicating with each other virtually. That means that we have found new ways of reaching our clients, and we found new ways of reaching our people. When it comes to your operations, think about organizations like in aviation. Things have significantly changed right now. The way that aviation works would significantly have changed. In the South African context, if we look at SAA, there's no operations happening now, but it gives them a chance to be able to focus their capital on doing rehabilitative maintenance. It gives them an opportunity to focus on doing work that might increase capacity, and really looking at what the capital program would have been for the future. And what it's going to look like now. New routes that may have been in the planning may not happen. So they need to adjust the way that they are working. When you look at what it means for your supply chain, and this I think is one of the key areas of impact for all businesses, whether you're a small business, whether you're a medium business, a corporate or a state-owned business. Things have changed significantly, and operations may have come to a halt, particularly where you've had some downtime when you look at the lockdown impact. I read yesterday some feedback that came from the manufacturing circle, and what they were saying is that steel manufacturers might find that they can restart their operations in a month, and some of them might take up to 6 months or longer. So if you think about having steel operations in your supply chain and what that might mean to you and your business in terms of delivery, if you're in construction, if you were railway, or etc., how is that impacting on the delivery of your projects? And you need to understand what that means. So when we're doing a deep dive, we can actually unpack all of these areas for you to understand what it means and how it's impacting on your business. Rahima mentioned the last time we've had to look at a major global impact being 9/11. But if you step back as well and look at the global economic crunch of 2008, you will note that in the South African context, one of the things that helped us manage our way through the economic crunch is the fact that we had capital programs in execution. We were preparing for the World Cup. So we had stadia that were being built. We had Gautrain that was being built. We had expansions to our airports around the country. So the economy was being stimulated as we navigated our way through this economic crunch. However, looking at it from where I was at the time, which is a state-owned entity, we needed to really look at our capital program and what that meant for us. And what we did was we reworked our capital program and focused on only the major maintenance interventions that we needed to get going to keep the business running. But we went a step further. What we did was we planned and made sure that if we were to have projects that would come on board as we got out of the economic crunch, we focused on the projects that we could prepare that would give us the highest yield. We focused on projects where we knew we had the highest volumes, where there was demand for those projects. And we made sure we started planning for that. So as we started to relook at our operations, we focused on what we needed to do to bring the business back on board, but with much more volumes, and to ensure that we had a business that was yielding the returns to meet the shareholder requirements. So essentially, during this process of looking at your supply chain, looking at your operating model, looking at your people, and looking at your strategy, if you have a project and you have reviewed your project, it's simple enough for you to say that you can align your cash flows, and you can align those cash flows to the changed environment. But now, what does it mean in terms of all of these other lenses that we say we need to look at? At the end of this program, what we do for you, what we bring out of this project is we ensure that we've done a deep dive analysis looking at those areas of your business program, whether it be your people or any one of those lenses. And what we do is we help you to find a solution so that we can navigate our way through that. We go through a process where we adapt whatever it is that we've identified as an issue for you to be able to change and to operate your business in a new way. And that's what we call the advancement. When you go into the advancement process, you need to transform your business. And we help our clients to work through the advancement and to navigate their ways into a new way of doing business based on the current environment. Rahima, at this point, I really can take questions from people if they have any, if they want to understand the model a little better, and if there's one area that you want me to focus on, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Natasha. Quite illuminating. So this is the point where we will open it up to the floor if there are any questions. For me, what's really come through at this point in time is thinking about my own supply chain, my own value chain, and what is going to be impacted by capital infrastructure spend, which is something we don't think about, right? Because we think that we're so far downstream that it's only about our insular circle of operations that are going to be impacted. But perhaps the attendees on this platform right now have got questions, and we are opening it up to them for that. And as we are getting questions, if I ask that you raise your hand so that we're aware of who has a question. And before any other questions come in, perhaps if you can perhaps illuminate for us, if you have got that kind of dependency, beyond just evaluating where your risks are lying, what is it that you can do? I mean, a lot of people right now are responding or reacting quite quickly by thinking that they have to change their business lines, they have to do something different. What is the other thing that you can do if you are impacted at this point in time? Is it a wait and see, or is there more to it that can happen?
No, it's definitely not a wait and see. What you need to be doing is assessing the major impacts of your business on your business right now. And this is why the model is important to have a look at the impact of COVID-19 right now and post COVID-19. So right now, your business will be changing. You will have clients that may have changing requirements. You may need to look into your supply chain and have a look at what the impact is of them having to have had a lockdown. Operations may have come to a halt. You may not have access to the supply elements that you need for your projects or your business. And you need to actually adapt and make changes in the way that you operate for those delays that you might potentially have. It's about making sure that you understand the opportunities and obligations and the shared challenges to build resistance and resilience in the programs that you have. Are there any questions?
There are no questions at this point in time, but can I ask that you go into the model a little bit more so that people can understand, if you unpack it a bit more for them, to understand a bit more context of its application practically?
Sorry, I missed you there. It's breaking up.
Yeah, we're having technology challenges as usual. Hey, this is a brand new paradigm. The question was, can you unpack your model a bit more so that the participants have a better sense of the practical application once it's unpacked a bit more?
Okay, so what we would do is I would, for example, ask you to give me what your main pain points are. And if your pain points, for example, is your strategy, we will do a deep dive into your strategy to understand what the changing environment means to you. How has, for example, in a South African context, the fact that we've been downgraded, you now have to have a look at the impact on your business cases, what the changing variables in terms of interest rates and so forth mean for your capital projects. Do they still make sense? Are they still viable? Do you need to have a look at what the economic environment looks like? We're going to have a slow pace of going back to the norm. And how do you ramp up for those to adjust to that? And what we will do is understand in terms of your context in your business, what that means for you. If I had to take an example of your people, we will have a look at there are areas that may have had a more devastating impact as a result.
The question was, can you unpack your model a bit more so that the participants have a better sense of the practical application once it's unpacked a bit more?
Okay, so what we would do is I would, for example, ask you to give me what your main pain points are. And if your main pain points, for example, is your strategy, we will do a deep dive into your strategy to understand what the changing environment means to you. How has, for example, in a South African context, the fact that we've been downgraded, you now have to have a look at the impact on your business cases, what the changing variables in terms of interest rates and so forth mean for your capital projects. Do they still make sense? Are they still viable? Do you need to have a look at what the economic environment looks like? We're going to have a slow pace of going back to the norm, and how do you ramp up for those to adjust to that? And what we will do is understand in terms of your context in your business what that means for you. If I had to take an example of your people, we will have a look at there are areas that may have had a more devastating impact as a result of COVID-19, where there might have been a huge loss to the workforce. What we will do is look at how you adjust the way that you work and ramp up your capability. What you need to do to get to where you were for your operations. There might be a number of ricocheting impacts, not only on the people, but also on operations, because you now need to change and maybe bring down the number of volumes that you may have been doing, so you can align that and readjust the business to what it needs to be.
Wearing my entrepreneur hat, what I'm getting from you is this is the time basically for organizations to go into risk assessment mode. Large organizations are typically continuously looking at their risks, and the board basically signs off on the risk and the appetite for the risks and the mitigating procedures, as well as what to invest in the mitigating space. So what I'm getting from you is that entrepreneurs as well who are in this space should also be thinking about their own risk assessments, and it's a healthy culture to adopt, and basically that risk assessment is sitting back and saying, what are the potential bad things, ugly things that could happen out there? And if I identify all that they are, and one way of looking at it is to look at my supply chain, my value chain, as to what I'm doing in my business, what impacts me that is not within my immediate control, and understanding what the impact is of that risk materializing, being able to assess whether those risks are high, medium, or low in terms of not just the likelihood of happening, but also the impact within the organization. So right now, organizations should be sitting down and defining their risk matrix and their risk framework, and understanding with the risks that are coming on board, what the implications are for their business and what appetite they have for the various risks that are starting to present themselves because of what COVID is manifesting in that space. And that's going to guide them in terms of some of the mitigation strategies. I see that Ponnie has her hand up. So Lesego, can you please allow Ponnie to speak in this space?
Well, hello everyone. Yes, I would like to know, how does this relate to a service organization? I have an education center in Rivonia, in Sandton. How does this, what we're going through, apply to an organization that offers a service as opposed to a product? Thank you.
Thank you, Ponnie.
Thank you, Ponnie, for your question. The way that it has been designed is it will be able to assist you in service and in product. So if, for example, you're in service, you also need to look at your strategy and the impact on the strategy. Right now, we know that from an operational perspective, there are some issues you need to look at in terms of how you do your business and provide your service. Is your service impacted in terms of the environment that you work in? Do you offer your service in, I'll take, for example, if it's a restaurant service, or if it is, how does that impact in terms of the space that you use, and the work that you will be doing with people, having people come into that space? In terms of offering the service, are you able to connect with people? Do you need to change your operations? Do you reach people remotely? Do you reach people in a different way to be able to meet their service requirements right now and in the future? So you may have to just adjust for now and then make another adjustment for the future And that is why we say it's important for you to have a look at what it is that you're doing right now and what you need to do in the future. So for the meantime, you can find a way to deliver your service by looking at those four lenses, looking at your strategy, your operations, your people, and your supply chain. And in delivering your service, how is your supply chain impacted? What do you need to get from other people to be able to deliver your service? And are they able to assist you right now? Does that help you, Ponnie?
Yes, you've covered the points that I've been considering as well, because one of the things that are impacting me at the moment is that parents can't pay fees. So it's having a ripple effect on my financial status. But I'm also looking at online and looking at a niche, things that other education institutions are not providing at the moment. Yeah. So looking at that niche is where I'm in the process of coming up with partnerships, but also looking at the needs of people, like students out in the township areas and the villages. They don't have access to online tools. So us offering online services is not going to work. So I'm considering other services that I can provide that's more accessible to our poor children. Children who are well resourced, that's fine. You can do online. I just finished a lesson with my younger ones now. I showed them a video. I did lots of things, but my concern is the poor children who don't have access. So no, you are definitely, I missed the first part of your presentation, but I'm sure you will email us the recording and I'll catch up. But thank you so much. I think this is a great initiative. Thank you.
Ponnie. One thing I wanted to mention to you as well, Ponnie, in your context, when you look at your strategy and performance at that lens of your business, and you look at the different the changes in our environment from a government perspective, you in particular need to look at what is government doing for me. And we know that as South Africa, our government has come forward with a small business funding program. And you need to reach into that and see how you can make it work for you in the interim while our parents can't pay. And also come up with different payment options also for parents. I saw yesterday, I was looking at assisting somebody with some training requirements and looking at the options in the market. And we've seen that different universities and training institutions have come up with payment plans because they understand that there are changes in the market that impacts on people's ability to be able to meet payment requirements. So have a look at those options as well. And well done on you, and thank you for the work that you're doing with our children.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You know what? Thank you so much. I'm trying to think outside the box here, and I've made some inroads into spreading the word. I'm on the media these days on a radio station called Caxton Radio. They've also, the newspaper version has made videos of me talking about different issues, so educational issues. So I really think, about us uniting as a country, we are well on that pathway. I'm very proud of our government and the way they are addressing this COVID-19 virus and putting in place various, conditions. But I think we need to, I'm very passionate about children, and I really am worried about our children. We've got to keep them on track, and make sure they're educated. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your initiative too.
Thanks, you're welcome. We've got another question from Dudu Msomi. And Dudu wants to know, in the context of risk management and considering that large companies have more financial resources than smaller companies, why is it that none of the companies who tout enterprise-wide risk management approaches they foresaw the likelihood of the impact of coronavirus? So I think Dudu's wanting to know why it hasn't been planned for, and it's a very good question. It's a good question also when you have a look at, there's a clip going around, and I saw CNN had it on the news, where Barack Obama spoke about having to plan in the future for an epidemic of the magnitude that we might have had in the past. I spoke to a virologist, and she was saying that virologists are constantly working on the changes in our bodies and what happens to viruses as we evolve as a people. So yes, Dudu, there must have been a conversation between government and the medical fraternity to understand what potential risks might emerge. And if you look at SARS and Ebola, we definitely should have been including the risks of this magnitude, but I think what we could not have foreseen is the magnitude of the impact. I don't think either SARS or Ebola has brought us to our knees, so to say, as COVID-19 has. And we all have business continuity plans, and I think this process has been a real test of that. What we did as a business in preparing for a potential lockdown is we started in February getting people to departments at a time to work from home, so that we, without any notice, so that we can test the resilience of our systems. But I think in terms of meeting a risk of this magnitude, it speaks to businesses having good business continuity plans. I remember I was at a state-owned entity for a long time, and we had a major a bomb scare in the building that we were at. And we were evacuated and taken to a place where we needed to go to assemble. That was further away from our normal assembly point. So we had one assembly point that we would meet at, and then the other assembly point that takes us away from the building. And it worked well. But what this process is doing for us, it's testing the resilience of your systems over a longer period of time. And I think that is what the business continuity planning is all about. And when you say that you've got a business continuity plan, this has been the real test of how resilient that plan is.
So we've got two things. One is if we can have, Dudu, did you want anything to add to that? And then after Dudu, we'll give Trifina an opportunity to speak. Dudu?
Not so much. It's just, there's just something, I think, missing in the way we think about the world, in the way we think about risks. Most of us just, and I think of the boards that I sit on, we kind of have a risk register and we look at it, and I don't know how much interrogation actually happens and how much environmental scanning happens. And it's just like, at the moment we're trying to make the COVID-19 a black swan, which is not a black swan. It's, so there's a limitation in the way we are thinking. And if we don't interrogate the way we think of things, and maybe it's also the risk teams, how diverse are they in terms of their thinking and their skill set, and their knowledge, and how outside the box they think. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're going to be back in this place.
You know, Dudu, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, at Womenomics Africa, we're looking at connecting African women to opportunities on the continent. And what we're finding is, I mean, Natasha, you've mentioned the fact that one of the key things you need to look at in your risk framework is your strategy, your delivery, and your supply chain. We are already not even thinking on a Pan-African perspective. We're already not thinking about what are the risks that apply outside of the country, unless you're large corporations. The reality is, this has shown is the interconnectedness of the world. And therefore, our risk analysis requires a review in terms of what are we actually perceiving as risk, documenting, and saying that we have the appetite for. Nobody could have had the appetite for this kind of occurrence. And therefore, why were there not adequate mitigating practices in place? It's a very good and valid question.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Natasha.
Thanks, Dudu, and thank you for that very good question. And I think it's important as boards and executives to be able to understand what the environment is that you operate in and how it is going to impact on your business. I think what COVID-19 has taught us is that we don't operate in a silo. The world is so interconnected. We all are impacted by what happens around us. And, you know, people don't realize that if something happens in America, the impact that it could happen in South Africa is equally as large. And I think what COVID-19 has taught us is that when you build resilience into your planning and your operations, you better make sure that it is a resilience that your business can withstand. And I think we are being tested now in terms of the way you and I have to even communicate with each other right now. Trifina, you had another question?
Trifina, you had your hand up. You've been unmuted. You're welcome to share your question here.
I was just saying, thank you very much, Womanomics, for organizing this session. And thanks to Natasha as well, for all the work that you do for SMMEs. And so my question is around macro enterprises. I had run a small business, and yes, I've had the presentation in terms of looking at the business continuity and strategy operations, and just what you've mentioned now, how we all work together. Our businesses are so interconnected, and especially in construction. I'm a quantity surveyor, and with different stages, once you reach construction phase, you have to be on site, and we all know that we can't go anywhere. And so my question really is, what can we do other than all the social media that we are using to keep the marketing up and running? What are the, some of the practical tips for us to keep on, moving forward and just preparing for the end of the lockdown, just so that we are ready by the time that the lockdown has been lifted? And yeah, so I wonder if you could share some of those.
Thank you, Trifina. So I'm very proud to have Trifina in the audience. Trifina is one of the small businesses that we work with. She's come on board as one of our businesses that we are developing, and she's going through our ISO training. Trifina, what we've been doing as an organization is keeping in touch with our clients. I myself have been making a concerted effort to reach out to my clients on a almost every second day, checking in with them, seeing what has changed. And in developing this business continuity model, what we have found is reaching out to our clients. They've said to us, thank you so much. All we needed to know is, someone is thinking about what we can do right now and what's going to happen post-COVID-19. As a small business, what I would say to you is keep in touch with your network, particularly the organizations that you've worked with and that you work with. Check in with them on a daily, weekly basis. Find out from them what is happening in their businesses and what is changing. Keep close to the market and understand what is happening in the market that you operate in. You and I have been very closely working with each other, having a look at opportunities in the market and how we can collaborate on those, particularly at a time like this, where we know that there might be projects in the market that needs to be kicked into action right now. So it's about keeping in touch with your network, keeping in touch with your clients, and making sure that you're understanding how this COVID-19 is changing the environment that you work in. and what that means for your business.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. All the best, and I'll be in touch with you.
All right. Thank you.
Natasha, one of the things that you mentioned in terms of what you're doing in terms of support of entrepreneurs is ISO certification. Can you tell the participants on this panel a little bit more about what that is and how that fits in? And does it support in any way some kind of building in of resilience?
So what we've done as an organization, part of the training that we provide to small businesses is the ISO training. We have a look at businesses that are related to what it is that we do, and we've identified some small businesses that we can work with. It's part of what we do on our BE scorecard, and we've had some incredible results. Our results has shown that the businesses that we've trained have been able to get in touch with projects and actually earn huge returns from it. What we do, Rahima, is we have a look at businesses like Trifina's. She's established herself, she's worked out a strategy, she's got a team working with her, and she's already had 1 or 2 projects or more that she's been active in the market with. We then have our team of people that will take her through a very comprehensive ISO training that will build more resistance into her business and actually build behaviors into the business that will help her better position herself to do work with government and the private sector. And that's essentially what it is that we do. And we provide this training at no cost to the identified candidate organizations. So Trafina and I were collaborating, for example, on a project, and I said to her, hey, why don't you have a look at what it is that we can provide your organization so that you can actually move from where you are into a better way of doing business and actually build a more stable business and better behaviors into your business so that you're able to earn higher returns. And that's how come she got trained on the ISO training.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. I mean, what I'm taking from this session quite clearly is I have personally 3 key takeaways, and I think that others have got different takeaways that they've been able to onboard from this. The first one for me is about understanding your risk environment and risk framework. And what was helpful for me was categorizing that into my strategy, operations, delivery, and supply chain. Where are my risks? What are they looking like right now? What is the highest impact and likelihood of those that haven't yet manifested? And therefore to address attention in terms of resources towards addressing that. The second thing that I picked up was this notion of the need to build resilience within the organization. And that resilience supports me in terms of building strength, or rather my muscle to ride the storm. And that requires me to adopt some of my behaviors. So not only do I need to understand the risks that are out there, but I also need to understand what is in my control in terms of the behaviors that we are adopting within the organization and what I need to start changing just to not only ride the wave, but on a sustainable basis. And I think Dudu's comment comes into there and saying, well, how are we looking at risks? And there's a need, even in that risk framework that has been put forward, for us to challenge ourselves as entrepreneurs in terms of what are we looking at and what are we considering risks, and how are we articulating them, and if we've got boards, how are we asking our boards to help and challenge us to looking at our risks differently. And I think finally, I think for me, the final contribution that I think that comes out from this, and that's based on, I think it was Ponnie's or Trifina's comment about how interrelated and we are in our business, is this notion of strengthening ecosystems of support, understanding that we are not isolated. And so what comes from me, and I think, is that really for a lot of us, we are appreciating, and particularly through Womenomics Africa, one of the things that we are appreciating is the ecosystems of support, particularly for women entrepreneurs, and strengthening those in terms of not just your not just the women entrepreneurs, but those who essentially are procuring services from them, those who are development funding in that space, and those who've got projects basically that incorporate women entrepreneurs into there. And I think what I've taken up from that is this need to build stronger communication lines. And I think a lot of people have adopted social media right now, but the reality is that business is not made on social media. There's still those other stronger, deeper relationships that we need to make sure that we're keeping on board. And I think the important thing for entrepreneurs right now is this opportunity to not just communicate, but to share what we like to call Womenomics Africa actionable commercial insights that allow entrepreneurs to still access leads, access knowledge, and access opportunities, even as we are navigating how we need to reposition our organizations. And those are the three key takeouts I've had from this session, which has been very helpful. And I think Trifina also adds that the ISO 9001-15 has been helpful in assisting her business to put together a risk register as well as mitigation. And I think it's, and one of the key things that I think most people who go through the process is that quality management system, which forces the goals and objectives and processes to be evaluated in the context of the operations, but bearing in mind what the environment and the response that the environment has and one has to the environment. So those were my key takeouts, and perhaps you would like at this moment to share some of your last keywords for the participants.
Yeah, I think what I want to leave you with very importantly is right now you should be focusing on three. You should be focusing on assessing where you are. Where am I now? What does it mean? What analysis do I need to do in terms of my business? Which are the four lenses that I need to focus on, and which do I need to prioritize? Then you need to look at how you need to adjust. What do I need to change, and how do I need to adjust my business so that I can operate as I go into the last phase, is my advancement. How am I going to advance my business post this, and how am I going to navigate my way through it? And I'm going to need to transform the way that I work, and I'm going to need to look at what change management I need to put in place. I want to wish you all the very best of luck, and remember, Turner and Townsend is a click or a phone call away.
Thank you so much for that, Natasha, and to all the guests that have attended this particular session. Thank you to Solidaridad. Precious is on the line. Precious, I don't know if you'd like to say anything at this point. I think we will allow you to do so. If you raise your hand and indicate that you would, Lesego, please just unmute Precious, please. And thank you to everybody who's participated and for the key insights you have shared in this session. Precious, I'm giving you a moment. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I was just really thanking Lebo and Rahima for this wonderful session, and obviously our wonderful guest. I mean, this was really eye-opening, and I personally learned a lot because the topic was very new to me, and really thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next sessions, and I'm not sure if some of my colleagues are online, but really thank you very much. This was great.
Awesome thinking. And talking about the next session, ladies, our next session is talking about the opportunities in the oil and gas industry during and post COVID-19. Our guest speaker is none other than Deslin Maketa, and she is from Standard Bank and responsible for client coverage in oil and gas Southern Africa in the Standard Bank group. And our context for that particular discussion is a recognition that business is still happening, opportunities are still out there, and one of the key drivers in our economies right now is dependent on oil and gas. And to get an understanding of what the opportunities still are, where that Mozambique oil and gas, everybody's talking about this 5 billion, 2 years, where is that opportunity sitting? What does it mean? And how can women entrepreneurs still participate given what's on board? So if you haven't as yet, do tune in, because that's coming up on Monday, and you will have links to that on the closeout session that's going to be sent to you later today. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you so much, Natasha and Turner and Townsend. Thank you so much, Precious and Solidaridad. And to all of you who've made the time every single time to come through, welcome, and thank you very much for participating. We look forward to having you again. Cheers.